Hello friend again, welcome back to Shadows of Revenge. First at all tell me, where are you from the world watching my video? This is a true story, so watch till end. My name is Calvin Palmer. New Year's Eve had always belonged to Margaret. For more than 4 decades, she treated it like a small personal holiday inside the larger one, polishing the silver she'd barely used, insisting on cloth napkins instead of paper, humming to herself while something in the oven burned just slightly more than it should. The house used to glow on nights like this, not from the lights or the decorations, but from her presence, the way she moved through rooms as if the walls themselves were glad she was there. This year, the glow was gone. I stood alone at the kitchen counter, smoothing a tablecloth that didn't need smoothing, listening to the quiet hum of a refrigerator that felt far too loud in a house built for voices. Outside, snow drifted down in slow, lazy spirals, catching the yellow porch light like ash falling from a distant fire. The clock on the wall ticked forward with an almost accusatory patience. 3 years ago, Margaret had laughed right here, pulling a tray of rolls from the oven, waving smoke away with one hand while calling my name with the other. "Calvin," she'd said, grinning despite the burn. After 42 years, you'd think I'd master the oven. I'd kissed her forehead and told her the rolls were perfect. They weren't. She was. Tonight, the rolls were store-bought. Still warm, still edible, still wrong. Everything felt like that now, technically intact, but stripped of its soul. The dining table looked too big with only 4 places set, the oak scarred and solid beneath my fingers, built by my father's hands decades ago. That table had seen birthdays, arguments, reconciliations, and apologies whispered long after plates were cleared. It had held the weight of our family. For the first time in 43 years, I was hosting New Year's Eve alone. Not entirely alone, I reminded myself. Adrian was coming. My son, my only child. He, his wife Kristen, and little Jackson would be here soon. That should have comforted me. It should have filled the empty spaces Margaret left behind. Instead, a quiet unease sat heavy in my chest, uninvited and unexplained. At 5:15 p.m., the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and sudden, and for half a second my heart leapt with a foolish hope that it might somehow be her. I shook the thought away and crossed the living room, my shoes soft against the carpet she'd chosen years ago because it felt kinder on tired feet. I opened the door to winter air and familiar faces. Adrian stood first, stamping snow from his boots, taller than me now, shoulders broad, posture confident in a way that made him look like a man who had figured life out. He wore a long wool coat, tailored, expensive. When he straightened, he smiled and pulled me into a brief hug. "Dad," he said, his voice warm, practiced. I caught the scent of cologne, sharp, modern, not the drugstore brand he'd worn for years. Something new, something costly. Behind him, Kristen hovered with her polished smile, the kind that never seemed to falter no matter the situation. Her coat was cashmere, soft and elegant, and when she slipped it from her shoulders, the weight of it felt heavier than it should have in my hands. Her handbag followed. Leather, structured, unmistakable. Prada. I'd seen enough students try to impress each other to recognize it. $3,000, minimum. Jackson stood slightly apart, clutching a backpack to his chest as if it were armor. He was 9 now, too old to hide his feelings well, too young to know what to do with them. His eyes flicked past me into the house, cautious, observant. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Adrian moved past me, and that's when I saw the watch. It caught the light as he shrugged off his coat. Rose gold, heavy, unmistakable. A Rolex. The kind of thing I used to point out in class when discussing symbols of wealth and literature. The kind of thing that cost more than I had made in 6 months teaching high school English. Just last month, he'd sat across from me at this very table, rubbing his temples, telling me the real estate market was brutal. "Money's tight, Dad," he'd said. "We're barely keeping our heads above water." I'd offered to help. He'd refused, almost offended. The watch told a different story. Kristen's smile widened as she stepped inside. "Dinner smells amazing," she said, her voice bright, almost too bright. "What are we having?" "Roast chicken," I said. "Mashed potatoes. Margaret's green beans." Her smile flickered, just for a moment. A blink and you miss it hesitation before she recovered. "Lovely." We moved into the dining room, coats draped, shoes lined neatly by the door the way Margaret liked. Adrian pulled out Kristen's chair for her before taking his own, his phone already in his hand, screen lighting his face in short, restless bursts. Jackson slid into the chair beside mine, silent. I reached over and ruffled his hair. "How's school, buddy?" "Fine," he said, not looking up. I'd taught teenagers for nearly 4 decades. I knew the difference between fine and fine. One meant contentment. The other meant something was wrong, and the person saying it didn't know how to explain it yet. Jackson wasn't watching his food. He wasn't watching me. He was watching his father. Adrian's phone buzzed once. He checked it, jaw tightening, then set it face down. It buzzed again, and again. Each time, his knuckles whitened, his shoulders stiffened, and each time he didn't answer. Kristen filled the space with chatter, sales at Nordstrom, a neighbor's renovation, Jackson's upcoming school play. Her words flowed easily, rehearsed like lines delivered many times before. "Everything okay at work?" I asked casually, passing the chicken. "Fine," Adrian said, the same hollow word Jackson had used. Somewhere between Little League games and real estate deals, my son had learned to hide his emotions. But fathers don't stop reading their children just because they grow older. Tonight, beneath the polish and the expensive accessories, I saw fear. The phone buzzed again. Adrian's fork clattered against his plate. "Sorry," he muttered. "Work. It's been." He didn't finish. The phone was already at his ear as he stood, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I need to take this." Kristen's smile never wavered. "Of course, honey." Adrian glanced at the screen one last time before moving toward the basement door. Something shifted in his expression. Not panic, not relief, but calculation. "Won't be long," he said. The basement door closed behind him with a soft click. His footsteps echoed down the stairs, each one fading until there was nothing but the murmur of conversation and the quiet hum of the house. Kristen kept talking. I wasn't listening. I was watching Jackson. He'd set his fork down. His small face had gone tight, eyes fixed on the empty doorway where his father had disappeared. It was the same look he'd worn 3 years earlier at Margaret's funeral. Too young to understand death, but old enough to know something irreversible had happened. Before I could speak, Jackson pushed back his chair. "I need to use the bathroom," he mumbled, already moving. "Honey, use the one upstairs," Kristen began, but he was gone. I tried to return to clearing plates, nodding at Kristen's words, but a quiet alarm began ringing somewhere deep in my chest. A minute passed, then 2. Jackson hadn't gone upstairs. I hadn't heard the familiar creak of the steps or the soft thud of feet overhead. Instead, I remembered the faint padding of footsteps heading down the hall toward the basement. My stomach tightened. I set the dishes down and moved toward the basement door just as it swung open. Jackson stumbled through, his face drained of color, his body shaking so hard I barely caught him before he fell. "What's wrong?" I asked, pulling him toward the kitchen, away from Kristen's cheerful monologue. His hands gripped my sleeve like a lifeline. "Grandpa," he whispered, his voice barely there. "I heard Daddy talking." "Honey," I said softly, crouching to his level. "You shouldn't eavesdrop." He shook his head violently, eyes wide with terror. "He was talking about you." The world seemed to tilt. "What do you mean?" I asked. His voice dropped even lower. "He said dying. And tonight. And your name." A cold numbness crept up my spine. I heard words, Jackson continued, stumbling over them. "Furnace. And carbon something. And numbers. Big numbers. 750,000. The air left my lungs. Carbon monoxide. The missing detector in my bedroom. The furnace. My life insurance policy. Adrian was the beneficiary." "No," I said automatically. "No, buddy. You probably misunderstood. Maybe he was talking about work. A client. He said by morning." Jackson whispered, tears spilling over. "Grandpa, what does that mean?" Footsteps sounded on the basement stairs. Adrian was coming back. I squeezed Jackson's shoulders gently but firmly. "Not a word," I whispered. "To anyone. Promise me." He nodded, fear freezing him in place. The kitchen door swung open. "Everything okay?" Adrian asked. His tone was casual. His eyes were not. They moved quickly between Jackson and me, sharp, assessing. I felt my grandson's small hand trembling in mine. "Fine," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Jackson was just helping me with the dishes." Jackson nodded. reaching for a towel with shaking fingers. Adrian studied us for a long moment. Could he hear my heart pounding? Could he tell that something fundamental had shifted? Kristen's voice called from the living room. Adrian, the Hendersons are here. Adrian turned away, but not before I caught it. The look that crossed his face. Not guilt, not panic, calculation. The doorbell chimed again, and neighbors began to fill the house with coats and laughter, with casseroles and champagne, with the warmth of tradition. I stood in my kitchen holding my grandson's shaking hand, and the truth settled in with horrifying clarity. My son was planning to kill me, and this was only the beginning. For the next half hour, I moved through my own house like a man underwater. Faces blurred together. Voices reached me, as if from the end of a long tunnel. I shook hands, accepted casseroles, laughed at jokes whose punchlines I never heard. The Hendersons, the Millers, the Kowalskis, neighbors who had crossed this threshold for decades, people who had watched Adrian grow from a scrape-kneed boy into a man with a confident smile, filled the rooms with warmth and noise. None of them knew. They talked about resolutions and vacations, about the coming year, and what they hoped it would bring. Champagne bottles popped. Music played softly in the background. Someone adjusted the thermostat and joked about old houses and stubborn furnaces. Every word felt like a blade sliding closer to my skin. All I could hear was Jackson's whisper, looping endlessly in my mind. Furnace. Carbon something. Tonight. By morning. I kept telling myself it had to be a misunderstanding. Children mishear things. Context gets lost. Adrian worked in real estate. Insurance policies, inspections, repairs. There were 1,000 explanations that didn't involve murder. But my body didn't believe any of them. I watched my son from across the room, watched the way he laughed a half-second too late, the way his eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led upstairs. He stayed close to Kristen, his hand resting on her lower back, fingers digging in slightly when he thought no one was looking. She nodded along to conversations, smiling, but there was tension there too, a tightness around her mouth, a flicker of something like fear in her eyes. At 7 o'clock, when the house felt fullest, loudest, safest, I made my decision. House feels cold, I announced, raising my voice just enough to carry. I'm going to check the furnace. Kristen turned immediately. Oh, let Adrian do that later. I was already moving. I've been checking that furnace for 40 years. Won't take a minute. I didn't look back as I opened the basement door. The stairs creaked beneath my weight, as they always had. Each step familiar. Each one now carrying me farther away from the noise and deeper into something I wasn't ready to face. The air grew colder with every step, the sounds of laughter and music dulling into a distant murmur. At the bottom, the basement waited. The lights flickered on, revealing concrete walls, exposed beams, shelves lined with decades of storage, boxes of Christmas decorations, old textbooks, tools Margaret had insisted we keep just in case. The furnace sat in its corner like it always had, squat and unremarkable, humming quietly. I approached it slowly, my heart hammering so hard I was afraid it would echo. I crouched down and followed the exhaust pipe with my eyes, the way I'd done every winter since 1998. It should have vented straight out through the wall, expelling fumes harmlessly into the cold night air. It didn't. The pipe had been disconnected. Not broken. Not rusted through. Disconnected. Someone had deliberately redirected it upward, angling it toward the floor vent that led directly to the second floor, to my bedroom. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers traced the metal, feeling fresh scratches around the joints, the unmistakable signs of recent work. This wasn't wear and tear. This wasn't an accident. This was intent. I forced myself to keep looking, to keep thinking like the teacher I had been for nearly 4 decades. Evidence first. Emotion later. Near the furnace sat a small trash bin. Something pale caught my eye inside it. I reached in and pulled out my carbon monoxide detector, the one that had always been mounted just outside my bedroom door. I turned it over in my hands, popped open the battery compartment. The 9-volt battery was still there, fully charged. Someone hadn't forgotten to replace it. Someone had removed it on purpose. The basement seemed to close in around me, as the truth assembled itself piece by terrible piece. When the furnace ran tonight, carbon monoxide would fill my bedroom instead of venting outside. I would go to sleep and never wake up. Accidental poisoning. Tragic. Common. and Adrian would collect $750,000. My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. I took photos from every angle: the redirected vent, the disconnected pipe, the detector in the trash, the furnace serial number. Years of teaching had trained me well. Document everything. Facts before feelings. As I straightened, the floorboards above me creaked. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Someone was crossing the kitchen. They were coming toward the basement door. My heart slammed against my ribs as I shoved my phone back into my pocket, the evidence suddenly feeling hot against my chest. I forced my voice to steady, to sound normal, to sound like a man doing exactly what he said he would do. Just checking the filter, I called up. Everything's fine. Be right up. A pause. Long enough for 1,000 terrible possibilities to race through my mind. Don't stay down there too long, Adrian said finally. His voice was quieter now. It's getting cold. His footsteps retreated. I stood there, alone in the basement, staring at the machine that was supposed to kill me, and felt something inside me harden. Not fear. Something else. Something colder. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, my face carefully arranged into something neutral. Upstairs, the house buzzed with life. Music played louder now. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too hard at something that wasn't funny. I just found proof that my son wanted me dead. By 8 o'clock, I couldn't maintain the facade any longer. Excuse me, I said to the Millers, who were mid-story about a disastrous cruise. I've got a headache. Need to lie down for a bit. Concerned murmurs followed me as I headed upstairs. I closed my bedroom door behind me and locked it. The click of the bolt sounded unnaturally loud, like a gunshot in the quiet room. I sat on the edge of the bed Margaret and I had shared for 40 years, my phone glowing in my hand. I scrolled through the photos again and again, hoping I'd somehow imagined them, misinterpreted them. I hadn't. The evidence was clear, intentional, methodical. I stared at the empty pillow beside me and felt grief surge up, sharp and unexpected. Margaret's face floated into my mind, the way she'd looked at me 2 months before the cancer took her, her hand weak but her eyes clear. Watch Adrian, she'd said quietly. He always takes the easy way. Shortcuts. I'd brushed it off then. He's ambitious, Maggie. That's all. No, she'd said. He's desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. I understood now. The memories came rushing back. Conversations I dismissed. Questions I hadn't wanted to examine too closely. Adrian asking about my life insurance policy last year. Just curious, Dad. Suggesting I update my will for estate planning. Insisting I move in with him so we could help each other. I thought he was being thoughtful. He was being strategic. My mind raced through my options, discarding them one by one. Confront him directly? No. Desperate people are dangerous when cornered. Leave the house. And go where? On New Year's Eve, without explanation? And what about Jackson? My stomach clenched as the realization hit me, with fresh horror. Jackson's room was also on the 2nd floor. Carbon monoxide rises. If the furnace ran, my grandson would die too. Did Adrian know that? Did he care? The answer made me feel sick. I checked my phone battery. 47%. Enough. I uploaded the photos to cloud storage, my fingers moving quickly, automatically. If something happened to my phone, the evidence would still exist. A soft knock sounded at the door. Dad, Adrian's voice. Concerned. Gentle. You've been up here a while. Everything okay? I stood, slipped my phone into my pocket, and opened the door. Adrian filled the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. He held a wine glass in his hand, the liquid inside dark and heavy. Thought you might want this, he said, stepping closer. Big night. This'll help you relax. The smile he gave me was one I'd seen my entire life. Maybe even help you sleep better, he added. The word sleep hung between us, sharp and deliberate. I took the glass from his hand, feeling his eyes on me, watching, waiting. Thanks, I said. That's thoughtful. Drink up, Dad. I raised the glass, let the wine touch my lips without swallowing, tasted bitterness and oak and something metallic beneath it. Then I lowered it. Perfect, I said. I'll finish it downstairs. Adrian's shoulders relaxed. Good. Come down when you're ready. Party's getting lively. The moment he turned away, I stepped into the bathroom and poured the wine down the sink, watching it spiral away, dark as blood. When I returned downstairs, the house felt different. Smaller. The party had grown. 20 people now. Music louder, decorations going up, someone starting a countdown clock for midnight. I moved through it like a ghost, smiling, nodding, avoiding Adrian's eyes. He kept appearing beside me. Dad, you look exhausted. Why don't you turn early? Long day tomorrow. Each suggestion sounded caring. Each one was a countdown. Around 9:30, I saw Adrian and Kristen in the kitchen. They didn't notice me watching from the doorway. Kristen shook her head sharply, her expression tight with fear. Adrian grabbed her wrist, leaned in, whispered something I couldn't hear. Her face went pale. He released her. She nodded. At 10, I found Jackson on the couch, pretending to play on his tablet. I sat beside him, keeping my voice casual. Hey, buddy, do Grandpa a favor. He looked up. What? Sleep on the couch tonight. Watch movies. Tell Mom you want to stay up. I leaned closer, my hand firm on his shoulder. Jackson, this is important. If anything strange happens, anything, you run next door to the Johnsons. You call 911. You tell them exactly what you heard Daddy say. Understand? His eyes filled with tears. Grandpa, I'm scared. So am I said softly. But we're going to be okay. I promise. What are we talking about? Adrian's voice behind us. I turned. Just Grandpa and grandson stuff. His eyes narrowed, flicking between us. Everything all right? Perfect, I lied. He didn't look convinced. By 10:15, guests started putting on coats. By 10:25, Adrian raised his voice. Dad should really get some rest before midnight. The chorus agreed. At 10:30, I excused myself to the small bathroom off the kitchen. I closed the door behind me and locked it. The click echoed. Outside, Adrian's voice followed almost immediately. Dad, you okay in there? I pulled out my phone. The screen read 10:31 p.m. My finger hovered over the call button. 3 numbers. The end of my family. The beginning of whatever came next. I pressed call. 911. What's your emergency? My name is Calvin Palmer. I whispered. My son is trying to kill me. A bang on the door made me flinch. Dad, Adrian said, louder now. Answer me. The doorknob rattled. I pressed the phone closer to my ear and waited for the truth to finish what it had started. The operator's voice was calm, steady, trained to be calm when everything else was falling apart. Sir, I need you to stay on the line with me. Tell me exactly what's happening. I pressed my back against the bathroom wall, the cold tile seeping through my shirt, and forced my breathing to slow. Outside the door, Adrian stood close enough that I could hear him shift his weight, hear the faint scrape of his shoe against the floor. They sabotaged the furnace, I whispered. Redirected the exhaust. Disabled the carbon monoxide detector. My grandson is in the house. There was a pause, the faint clicking of keys. What's your address, sir? I gave it to her. The words felt unreal, like I was reciting lines from someone else's nightmare. Are you in immediate danger right now? Yes, I said without hesitation. They think I'm going to sleep in my bedroom tonight. Outside, Adrian tried the handle again, harder this time. Dad, he said, irritation bleeding through the concern. You've been in there a while. Mr. Palmer, the operator said, her voice firming. Officers are being dispatched to your location. I need you to stay where you are and keep the door locked. Kristen's voice floated in from farther away, sharp and anxious. Adrian, what's taking so long? He's not answering, Adrian said. Dad, unlock the door. My heart pounded so violently, I was afraid the operator could hear through the phone. I'm not feeling well, I called out, forcing the words past my teeth. Give me a minute. Silence. Then, quieter, closer to the door, Adrian's voice dropped into something else. Something stripped of pretense. Who are you talking to? The question sliced through me. Sir, the operator said softly, do not engage. Officers are approximately 4 minutes away. For minutes felt like an eternity. The doorknob twisted again, testing, more deliberate now. I could picture him on the other side, calculating, listening, deciding how much force to use. Kristen's voice rose, brittle with panic. Adrian, is he on the phone? A fist slammed into the door. I flinched, nearly dropping the phone. Dad, Adrian shouted. Open this door right now. Do not open it, the operator said sharply. Stay with me. Help is on the way. Another hit, harder. The frame shuddered. My thoughts scattered, leaping wildly between images. Jackson's small hands gripping his backpack. Margaret's smile. Adrian at 8 years old running toward me after his first Little League game. "Sir," the operator said, cutting through the chaos. "Where is your grandson right now?" "Downstairs," I whispered. "Living room. Away from my bedroom." "Good. Officers are 3 minutes out." 3 minutes. Outside. Adrian's voice changed again. The anger drained out, replaced by urgency. "Kristen," he called. "Get Jackson. We're leaving. Now." "No," I said instinctively, lurching toward the door before stopping myself. "Jackson, stay there." His voice floated up from somewhere below, small and terrified. "Grandpa." I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. "Officers are 90 seconds away," the operator said. "You're doing the right thing. Stay where you are." The door slammed inward with a crash that rattled the mirror. A crack splintered across the frame. "They're trying to break down the door," I said, my voice shaking now despite my efforts. "Mr. Palmer," the operator replied, steady as stone, "they will not reach you in time. Officers are on your street." Another impact. Wood creaked, strained. Kristen's voice cut through, shrill with panic. "Adrian, stop. They're coming." For a brief, terrifying second, everything went silent. Then sirens wailed in the distance. The sound cut through the house like a blade. "Oh God," Kristen whispered. Adrian swore under his breath. I heard hurried footsteps, frantic whispers, the scrape of shoes against the floor as plans unraveled. "Mr. Palmer," the operator said gently now, "officers are at your front door. When you hear them identify themselves, you may unlock the bathroom door. Not before." Heavy knocks thundered through the house. "Police! Open the door!" Shouts overlapped. Commands echoed. The sound of authority filled the space Adrian's voice had occupied just moments earlier. I slid down the wall, my legs trembling, the phone pressed to my ear. "You're safe," the operator said. "You did exactly what you needed to do." I waited until I heard it. The unmistakable bark of officers flooding the house, boots pounding against hardwood, voices sharp and loud. "Police. Hands where we can see them." Only then did I reach for the lock. My hand shook so badly I had to try twice before it turned. The door opened to reveal a female officer standing in the hallway, her hand resting on her weapon, eyes alert. "Calvin Palmer?" she asked. "Yes." "Are you injured?" "No," I said. "My grandson. He's safe," she said quickly. "Another officer is with him downstairs." My knees nearly buckled with relief. I stepped into the hallway, phone still pressed to my ear, the operator's voice now distant, background noise fading as reality surged back in. Adrian stood 10 feet away. There was nothing between us. No furniture, no walls, no illusions. Just a narrow stretch of hallway and 40 years of fatherhood cracking under its weight. His face was flushed, eyes bloodshot, chest heaving. His fists clenched and unclenched at his sides like he was still deciding something. Behind him, near the back door, Kristen stood rigid, one hand gripping Jackson's shoulder too tightly. My grandson's face was streaked with tears, his eyes wide with horror. "Let him go," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, hollow, emptied of everything but necessity. "This is between you and me." Adrian's eyes snapped to mine. "You called them." I raised the phone so he could see it. "Let the boy go." A siren wailed closer now, lights flashing through the front window, painting the hallway in violent red and blue. Adrian's face drained of color. Then it flooded back, hot and furious. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, his voice cracking. "They're going to arrest me. You call the police on your own son. You sabotaged the furnace," I said. "You were going to kill me. Tonight." Kristen's voice broke in, sharp and desperate. "We weren't actually going to go through with it. It was just a backup plan. We would have changed our minds." Adrian spun on her. "Shut up, Kristen." He turned back to me, desperation pouring out now, the mask on completely. "Dad, I had no choice," he said. "I'm drowning. 600,000 in debt. Loan sharks. Not banks, real ones. They threatened us. Threatened Jackson. So you decided to kill me instead," I said quietly. His face twisted. "You're 65. Mom's gone. You've lived your life. That money was just sitting there. You were going to die eventually," he added, his voice dropping. "We just needed it sooner." The words hit harder than any blow. Blue lights flashed brighter. The front door burst open as officers poured in, weapons drawn, voices overlapping in sharp commands. Adrian looked at Jackson, then at me. For one terrible second, I didn't know what he would do. His hand hovered near Jackson's shoulder. His eyes were wild, trapped, calculating one last move. Then something inside him broke. I watched it happen, the tension draining out his body, his shoulders slumping as defeat settled in. "Go to Grandpa," he whispered. Jackson tore free and ran to me. I caught him, pulled him tight against my chest, felt his small body shaking uncontrollably. I pressed his face into my shoulder so he wouldn't see what came next. But I saw it. I saw officers force my son to the ground. Saw his cheek press against the floor he'd grown up running across. Saw the handcuffs snap shut around wrists I'd once held to help him cross the street. I heard Kristen crying as she was restrained. Heard commands barked, radios crackling. I held Jackson and tried to remember how to breathe. Over his head, I watched Adrian look up at me one last time. His eyes were empty. Something fundamental had died long before tonight. Tonight had only revealed it. The next hour passed in fragments. My living room became a crime scene. Yellow tape blocked off the basement. Evidence markers appeared where laughter had been just minutes before. A photographer documented the furnace, the redirected vent, the disabled detector. I sat on my couch like a stranger, Jackson pressed against my side, both of us trembling. A victim advocate brought us water. Neither of us touched it. A detective introduced herself, Lynn Foster. Tired eyes, calm voice. She listened as I showed her the evidence, as technicians confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't an accident, one of them said quietly. Foster nodded. We'll be charging both of them. Through the window, I watched my son being loaded into a police cruiser, hands cuffed behind his back. He turned his head, our eyes meeting through the glass. His lips moved. I couldn't hear him. I didn't need to. As the car pulled away, something inside me collapsed completely. Later, Foster crouched beside Jackson. "You were very brave," she told him gently. "You saved your grandfather's life." Jackson said nothing. He just held my hand tighter. Before she left, Foster looked at me, her expression grave. "Your bedroom and your grandson's room, both on the second floor?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Carbon monoxide rises," she said. "It would have reached lethal levels throughout the entire floor." The words stole the air from my lungs. They weren't just going to kill me. They were going to kill him too. I looked down at my grandson and felt something inside me shatter all over again. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. A new year began, and nothing would ever be the same. By the time the last police cruiser pulled away, the house no longer felt like my home. It felt hollowed out, stripped down to walls and floors that had witnessed something they could never forget. The laughter was gone. The music had been silenced mid-song. Decorations hung crooked, frozen in the middle of a celebration that would never finish. Midnight had passed without a countdown, without cheers, without kisses. The new year arrived quietly, stepping over the wreckage of the old one. I sat on the couch where Adrian had once stretched out as a teenager, feet kicked up despite Margaret's protests, and stared at nothing. Jackson leaned against my side, his small body trembling in waves that came and went without warning. Every few minutes, he tightened his grip on my sleeve as if checking that I was still there. A woman named Patricia, the victim advocate, knelt in front of us, offering water, her voice soft and practiced. I nodded to be polite, but neither of us drank. My mouth felt dry, but swallowing felt impossible. Detective Lynn Foster returned, her coat draped over one arm, her notebook tucked beneath the other. She crouched in front of me, so we were eye level, her tone calm but unyielding. "Mr. Palmer," she said, "I need you to show me exactly what you found." I nodded and stood on legs that didn't quite feel like mine anymore. Patricia stayed with Jackson while I led the detective down the basement stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the house itself were resisting the truth being fully exposed. The furnace sat where it always had, silent now, its hum replaced by the clicking of cameras and a murmur of technicians. Evidence markers dotted the concrete floor. The redirected exhaust pipe gleamed under harsh light, unmistakable in its intent. A forensic technician straightened as we approached. "Exhaust pipe was deliberately altered," he said to Foster. "Carbon monoxide would have been pumped directly into the second floor." Detector was disabled, battery still intact. This was planned. Foster's jaw tightened. She scribbled notes, then turned to me. When did you take the photos? Around 7:30, I said. And you didn't confront them? No, I said. I was afraid of what he might do if he realized I knew. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. You did the right thing. Back upstairs, the living room buzzed with quiet activity. Officers speaking into radios, technicians packing equipment, yellow tape sealing off parts of the house that had once felt sacred. I showed Foster the photos on my phone. She scrolled slowly, methodically, the weight of each image settling deeper with every swipe. This is attempted murder, she said finally. Premeditated. The words landed with a dull finality. Thomas Reinhardt arrived shortly after. My lawyer, summoned by a frantic call from Mrs. Henderson next door. He squeezed my shoulder gently, his voice low. Calvin, don't say anything more tonight, he advised. We'll give a full statement tomorrow. I nodded, grateful for someone else to think clearly when I couldn't. Through the front window, I watched Adrian being led out of a patrol car, earlier replay in my mind on a loop. Now, in the quiet aftermath, the image returned with new weight. The way he looked back at the house at me, as if still trying to understand how it had all fallen apart so quickly. Kristen sat rigid in another cruiser, staring straight ahead, her face blank, emptied of emotion. Detective Foster crouched beside Jackson again before leaving. You were very brave, she repeated softly. You saved your grandfather. Jackson didn't respond. He just leaned into me, as if afraid that letting go would make everything disappear. Before she stepped out, Foster paused at the doorway. Mr. Palmer, she said quietly, did you ever suspect your son was capable of something like this? I looked around the house, at the splintered door frame, the crime scene tape, the spot in the hallway where officers had forced my son to the floor. No, I said. My voice sounded old, distant. I taught ethics and literature for 38 years. I taught him about right and wrong, about tragedy, about hubris. She nodded gently. You did what was right tonight. That took courage. After she left, Thomas sat with us, explaining what would come next. Arraignment, bail hearings, charges. His words washed over me like static. None of it felt real yet. At 2 a.m, Patricia helped us pack overnight bags. We couldn't stay in the house. It was still an active crime scene, and even if it hadn't been, I knew I wouldn't sleep here again. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Mrs. Henderson took us in, without question. She put Jackson in her guest room and made up the couch for me. The house smelled like lavender and old books. Safe, comforting. In the dark, I heard Jackson crying through the wall. Soft, muffled sobs, the kind children make when they don't want anyone to hear. I got up and went to him, pulling him into my arms as he shook. I'm sorry, Grandpa, he whispered. I'm sorry I told you. I held him tighter. Don't ever be sorry for telling the truth. Outside, fireworks cracked faintly in the distance. Somewhere, people were celebrating new beginnings. Inside, we mourned the end of everything we had known. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the back row of the courtroom while prosecutors laid out my son's choices piece by piece. They spoke of gambling debts, failed real estate deals, and a life insurance policy with my name on it, and his as the beneficiary. Experts described carbon monoxide poisoning in clinical terms, calling it the silent killer. How we would have drifted into sleep, never knowing what was happening. Adrian's defense argued desperation, not malice. Claimed it was a plan born of fear, never meant to be completed. The sabotage furnace told a different story. So did the 911 recording. So did my testimony. 3 hours on the stand. Adrian's eyes never left me. When it was over, Thomas squeezed my shoulder and told me I'd done the right thing. It didn't feel right. It felt like tearing out my own heart. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours. When a verdict was read, the courtroom felt too quiet. Guilty. Attempted murder. Guilty. Conspiracy. Guilty. Child endangerment. Sentencing came a week later. 25 years for Adrian. 20 for Kristen. As I led him away, Adrian looked at me. There was no apology in his eyes. No remorse. Only anger. His lips moved. This is your fault. Maybe it was. Maybe I failed him long before he ever touched that furnace. Jackson lives with me now. The court granted me custody, and slowly, painfully, we built new routines. Breakfast together. Homework at the kitchen table. Reading before bed. I read him the Chronicles of Narnia, lingering on the parts about courage and choosing what is right even when it hurts. 2 weeks after the trial, he asked me why his parents wanted to hurt me. I told him the truth in a way a child could carry, that people sometimes make terrible choices when they're scared and desperate, and that none of it was his fault. He asked if I was sad. Every day, I said, but I'm grateful I get to be here with you. I visited Margaret's grave alone and told her I had protected our grandson. I left tulips, her favorite, and noticed crocuses pushing through the cold ground, stubborn and alive. Jackson and I planted a Japanese maple in the backyard. He asked if it would grow big. It will, I told him, if we take care of it. Like us, he asked. Yes, I said. Like us. Some nights, after he falls asleep on the couch, afraid to return to his old room, I sit on the porch and think about choices. I lost my son, not to death, but to greed. I lost the family I believed I had, but I saved my grandson. Some choices break your heart. They're still right. Integrity is not about comfort. It is about truth, about showing the next generation how to choose courage over fear, even when everything hurts. The maple is budding now. Jackson waters it every morning. And when I watch him from the window, I no longer see what we lost. I see what we saved, together, still standing, still alive.